sometimes the right answer is two opposite right answers.
To explain that, what do you mean by that?
The explore-exploit trade-off isn't a trade-off. So if you look at... I'm sorry to people who listen to me a lot, I'm really sorry to talk about the bees again, because I don't want to become a bore. But the fact that
I like the bee story. Go.
Okay, some bees optimize, some bees obey the waggle dance, some bees don't. And this supplied... after they discovered... The guy won a Nobel Prize for discovering the waggle dance in bees.
And it's how they communicate with each other about where the honey, where the nectar is.
Where the nectar, where the pollen, and whether I think there's something else they collect, possibly water, but also resin, okay? And they communicate, and they go, it's relative to, I think, the position of the sun, and they can tell a load of other bees, okay, if you head off and travel 3/4 of a mile to the northwest, you'll find a lot of nectar, or a lot of pollen, okay? And the bees, now it's very clever, by the way, the better the source of pollen, let's say, the longer they dance for. Now that's not because the other bees are going, let me take out my bee stopwatch and measure how long it is, because if this guy's dancing for a long time, it must be a great source of pollen. It's simply that the longer you dance for, the more chance there is that bees see your dance. And so for an insignificant find or discovery, they'll only dance for a short time, and for a significant find, they'll do the dance for much, much longer, and as a result, they'll have a larger audience over time, and therefore more bees will be sent out, and then as the source gets depleted, the length of the dance decreases, so there's a feedback loop which means it's self-correct. But the bees also do a thing which they go off at random, okay? Now bee scientists were amazed by this at first because it's suboptimal in the short term, okay? This is another case of being short-term rational, long-term irrational. And indeed, if you had a load of accountancy bees and compliance bees, they'd say we want 100% compliance with the waggle dance. We don't want any deviation, no exploration at all. Just all collect nectar from where we know it's to be collected, and we'll have optimal short-term efficiency, which indeed you would do. Except you get trapped in a local maximum, and the hive starves to death when the environment changes. Now, in algorithm design, in animal foraging, there's a thing called the explore-exploit trade-off, which is the trade-off between the resources you dedicate to exploiting what you already know and the resources you dedicate to, that's exploit what you already know versus explore what you don't yet know, or what is new, or what is recent, okay? Okay, it's a constant updating. Now, the random bees, in fairness, have to report back. If the random bees discover something good, the system only works if the random bees share their discovery with the rest of the hive. It's not that the random bees don't waggle dance. It's simply that they ignore the waggle dance to begin with, and that's what happened. They modelled it as a complex system and realised that if you don't have a certain number of bees ignoring the waggle dance, you get actually about 4 problems. There's total lack of resilience because you're over dependent on what you already know, and you're over optimized on the past. You can also never get lucky, so you don't have, as Nassim would say, high surface area exposure to future upside optionality. Okay, because you're basically dependent on what you already know. Now, what's interesting is in algorithm design, it's called the explore-exploit trade-off. But when you think about it systemically, it's not a trade-off. It's two complementary parts of the same system. So it's two opposites working harmoniously, because you can't exploit effectively if you don't explore. And equally, there's no point in exploring if you can't exploit what you discover. So when we call it a trade-off, that in itself is bad nomenclature, I think. We shouldn't call it a trade-off. We should call it the yin and the yang of explore and exploit. You know, we should go heavily Asian on the idea of kind of the unity of opposites or the complementarity of two opposites. I mean, Nassim Taleb has a kind of barbell investment strategy, which he writes about, which is barbell is you don't optimize for the average, you optimize for two complementary extremes. And that would be you put 80% of your money in treasury bills, low chance of bankruptcy, absolutely surefire, consistent return, and then you ignore the middle, and then you put 20% that you could afford to lose in, like, you know, a mixture of like Broadway plays and .com startups or whatever. Okay.
And they're the explorer bees.
And the reason is you're exploiting an asymmetry, because although the chance of failure is quite high, okay, in that right-hand side of the barbell, the chance of complete bankruptcy is quite high, but the upside from success is potentially limitless. Okay? There's only so much you can gain from an obedient journey to collect nectar from a pre-existing known source, okay? Which is basically value of nectar collected, subtracted by, and then subtract energy required to connect nectar, okay? There's a finite upside to that activity. Whereas the upside from a discovery of a completely new source of flowers is potentially 10,000 times greater. Okay? So bees are effectively pursuing a barbell strategy, which is two opposites rather than one average. The average investment strategy would be you put all your money in medium risk things.